Hey everybody, Edo here, and today I want to tell you about 10 designers from the United States. You know, it's interesting, I was at a convention and everyone was walking around with those t-shirts with all the designer names and things like that, the cool folk. And I was looking at the names, and there are a lot of the traditional names, the big names, a lot of European names, certainly European names, a lot of US as well. But I was reading the names and I was like, those are all fabulous, fantastic, wonderful, great designers who are renowned. But I sort of was like, but those aren't the designers that first come to my mind. And I was just thinking about awareness and people knowing about designers and designers I like. And I don't know. I was like, I'm going to do a video of 10 designers. There's lots of great designers. There's lots of great designers across the world. There are a lot of great designers in the United States. These are 10 that I like a lot. They're active. These are people I've interacted with to some degree or another. So it's a pretty specific list. But boy, I'd love to tell you about these designers. And if you haven't checked out their games, you should. And I don't know, perhaps I'll do another one. I'll do it from an international one, or perhaps I'll do artists. I don't know. Or maybe 10 more. I haven't really thought it all out, frankly. But I wanted to start with these 10. And so I'm just going to jump right in. So first on my piece of paper here is Brian Hank. If you don't know Brian Hank, he runs Overworld Games, sort of the Kickstarter designer type of vibe, and he's probably most known for Good Cop, Bad Cop, but he also recently did Leaders of Euphoria, Exposed, New Salem, a number of social deduction games. I think he's moved out and around and slid away from them at different times, but that's sort of the bread and butter. Brian was born in Minneapolis, but now lives in Pasadena, California. And so, you know, when I reached out to these designers, I asked them, hey, how would you characterize your designs? What Brian said was easy to learn, quick to play, games that bring out emotion in players. And for sure, his games bring out emotion in players, because oftentimes in Good Cop, Bad Cop, you're on different sides of police and shooting people and, you know, that sort of table-based social deduction stuff. And it really works. He brings out a lot of fun, humor, laughter, and I've really enjoyed those games for that. They're often fast play, as he said, and just sort of easy to get into and get fun. People laughing loud at tables. Also thought about asking for a fun fact from these designers, and Brian sent that he has a dog by the name of Link and dresses Link up every Halloween appropriately. So, as Link. So, if you're into social deduction, for sure, you should check out Brian's stuff. Good Cop, Bad Cop is a great place to start. But he's doing a lot of interesting things, and as part of the community, he's been very active in helping out the Kickstarter scene and in proto-Spiel scenes, and really a great guy as well, and somebody I've interacted with. So, that's Brian. Next on my list is somebody from the League of Game Makers, Brad Brooks. Now, you may not have played that many of Brad's games because he really has two key ones. The first of which is Letter Tycoon, which is fabulous and came out a few years ago. And the most recent of which is Rise of Tribes. Both of those are published by Breaking Games. He doesn't run Breaking Games, he's a straight-up designer. But Rise of Tribes is great as well. And again, asking him, Rise of Tribes, he talked about sort of that prehistoric game and that dice queuing action of that mechanic, but he does a lot of interesting things where it's a combination of like lightweight mechanic with really interesting play. So he's got a nice mechanic dynamic motion going with his stuff. He was born in Hollywood, lives in San Fernando Valley now. And apparently this fun fact was that he's traveled up in a hot air balloon, but not down because he jumped out of it with a bungee cord, which is crazy. Also, in terms of how he got into games, I mean, his dad actually designed games, so it really pulled in together after Carcassonne, and that was the game he was playing that sort of drove him into design. Certainly worth checking out. May not have quite as many games as some of the other names on this list, but boy, first two swings were great. So I definitely recommend checking out Letter Tycoon and Rise of Tribes when it releases. The Kickstarter just ended, but I'm sure it'll be out soon. John Gilmore. Now, John Gilmore, somebody I've worked with directly. He worked on Heroes and Tricks with me. He was born in Morrisontown, New York, but he lives in Northwest Ohio. But he has done a lot of fun games. I would say easily he's probably best known for Dead of Winter, but he also did Vault Wars, News at 11, Dinosaur Island, and Wasteland Delivery Express. Though I haven't played that. I don't know if it's out yet or not. It may be. But I thought it was really interesting with John Gilmore when I asked him that question about his designs. He said he likes to think of his style as mid-Atlantic, which to me I was like, well, what's mid-Atlantic? And he says he loves Euro and Euro games and Ameritrash, and he tries to sort of bring together games that mash up both. And I would think that's really true. John Gilmore's stuff is oftentimes highly thematic, and thematic with the mechanics built in. And you have both sort of quick play action, damage dice, that kind of thing, depending on the game, and more systematic play, more, track multiple initiative strategy games. So I can totally see how he thinks of it as that blend of Euro games and Ameritrash, or Thrash actually, not trash. But either way, I guess it depends on your perspective. I think there's a really vibrant scene of game design in that category of taking, mixing sort of velocity, not aggressive might not be the right word, but sort of hack and slash, again, for better, sort of that style, go on the US side, and bringing in some of those other sensibilities from the longer play and more strategic, different systems, mechanics working together side on a lot of the Euro games. And I think that's a big part of what's emerging. And so if that's Mid-Atlantic, Mid-Atlantic is a great place to be right now. What was it? So he got into, actually it was interesting, he got into board games. 8 years ago he did Pocket Dungeon, which I haven't played, but apparently got a Golden Geek Award and was the top downloaded file on BGG that year. And he was working on Dead of Winter and started working with Isaac, who convinced him to go publish it or go find a publisher as opposed to do a print and play, which is what he was going to do. And Dead of Winter has been wildly successful, right? He was also apparently in a book as a kid because his scout troop was stuck in a camping during a horrible storm, the microburst. I think either the storm or the book, but that's sort of not what you'd expect. But John Gilmore is great, engaged at conventions, working with people. He works with publishers, it works in indie, always designing, really engaged, and just doing great work. Like, again, one of the things I have to say about all of these people and these designers is they're really a part of the fabric of the scene in the US on the design side. It's not to say there aren't others, and certainly there are a lot of huge, big-name US designers out there that I probably haven't included here. But, these are people I see at a lot of conventions really engaged. Next up is Nicole Klein. Nicole Klein is an emergent new female designer. She did Resistor, which I think was published by Level 99 Games, and then did Laser Riders. If you haven't seen the production copy of Laser Riders, it's amazing. I mean, I remember seeing a prototype version when I was playing in the Kickstarter, but the quality of the final version, Laser Riders is a track-laying game where you're trying not to, it's like Tron, right? But it's like set as VHSs in a box, and they've got like glitter on it. It is out of control. She works, she's part of Cardboard Fortress Games, or Cardboard Fortress. And actually, after those two, is getting involved in the Asteroid Centipede Missile Command Atari games that I think IDW is doing. And she might even be doing that with Jonathan Gilmore. I'd have to go check. But she was born in Philadelphia, working in Philadelphia. And, she thinks of her games as small games, clever games. I like to think of that as games that make you feel smart, games that make you feel engaged. They tend to be, a little bit of this sort of pattern track. I mean, these are particular, but little things where you feel like you've done something and you're like, ha-ha, ha-ha, like, ha-ha. That's how I describe a lot of the work, or just different moments. Getting a nice pop moment, I would say, is typical of Nicole's games, though she's got a lot more game making to do. She absolutely loves video games. That was her fun fact. She talks about Persona 5. So once you're in the Persona 5 category, you're like into video games, right? See if... Oh, and Resistor won a game jam, and that's how she sort of got into into the games. So, it doesn't really matter what order it is. Next up, I have Scott Alms, or Alms I think it is. Born in New York, living in Pittsburgh now. Scott has a lot of games. He has been a part of the Kickstarter scene as well as many other games. I mean, he is doing a lot of work right now. Best Treehouse Ever, which is fantastic. There's the whole Tiny Epic Defenders Galaxy Kingdom games, which are widely popular. But he did Harbor, The Great Dinosaur Rush, which was like I think my favorite game from last year that I played. Recently, Heroes of the Land, Air, and Sea. Just prolific dude. He likes to think of his games as accessible as fun, and sometimes streamlining and mixing new experiences, whether it's the Dexterity and Euro of Island Hopper or History and Creativity mix of the Great Dinosaur Rush. I think the Tiny Epics series was bringing that all together. I'd really agree with that. I think when I think of his designs, they have all of the lots of different games and game mechanics have like components that can be done well or done poorly, whether they're goal cards or whether it's the resource track, or like all these different design areas when you're folding them into a design. And he knows how to find the sweet spot on each one of those and fold in the right one. So you end up having these games that work, each thing feels like it has its place, but they're accessible and engaging. And I love this stuff. We were talking about working together for a little while. Our timelines didn't work out, but super cool guy, engaged in the space. And let's see, he's also a published author. That's his fun fact. Fantasy and sci-fi short stories, and apparently a patent owner for some railroad components. So that's pretty cool. And he started designing in college, which is a great place to start. Next up, this is a 6-person, but these aren't ranked. They're just got to do them some order. Is Luke Laurie. Now, Luke Laurie is a part of the League of Game Makers. I interviewed Luke in a Q&A on the design side. He was born in San Clemente, California, and now is living in Santa Maria. And he's early on in design. He did Stones of Fate, and then most recently did the Manhattan Project, which Energy Empire, which has been extremely well received. And he's really moved into these midweight Euro style games. He's really getting into that heavier component. He likes integrating science and other topics into his work. He's a teacher, right? How many years ago? Somewhere in here. 20 years, a teacher for 20 years, builds Legos with the students, both in really thoughtful, engaging designs that are really rich when you play them, and then being part of the community, whether it's the stuff with the league or just produce spiels or just engaging and helping things out. He's really getting into being a part of that fabric. So I've enjoyed his work. I can't wait to see more of it, and he's super accessible. So that's Luke. Next up is we have Steve Finn. Dr. Finn's Games. Now, Steve's interesting because he has been making games for a long time, but he's sort of been in this indie scene where he was making games in born in Boston and living in Chappaqua, but he was handing out games on tapes to people and little prototypes in VHS boxes and super early sharing sort of indie gaming scene. And then he started doing the Kickstarter thing, and Kickstarter after Kickstarter. And there are games that are certainly probably Biblios that people are familiar, which used to be Scribes and Scribes, and Biblios Dice. He worked on Herbaceous, which is fantastic. But on his sort of Dr. Finn's lines, you have, because Iello did Biblios, he's got the Institute of Magical Arts, Foragers, Slush Fund, I think it's Carpe Diem or something like that, Butterfly Garden, Cog, just a wealth of games. And he is very fondly and accurately referred to as the king of filler. He is awesome at, and this is how he put it, mechanically focused, streamlined, and quick games. And that's right. He is great at making tight mechanics that click through really well, are extremely well balanced and thought through, mathematically sound, and all produce interesting dynamics and moments in play, and just work. Like, you pick it up, you play it, you had fun. I mean, I've never played I haven't played all of his games, but there isn't a game of his I've played that I haven't just enjoyed and thought was smart and engaging. And so I really recommend getting yourself familiar with Dr. Finn's games. Maybe you've heard of Biblios or Herbaceous, but seeing his line. And when he does a Kickstarter, he does the sort of smorgasbord of, like, here's the other stuff I've worked on. You can always pick up some of his older stuff, and they're all great. Rahdo likes his stuff a lot, and so you can see a lot of playthroughs there. But certainly highly recommend Steve's work. You don't see him as much at sort of the full con circuit, but I do know he does a number of them on the East Coast. Also, apparently, he's a 5-time national Ultimate player. What? Ultimate Frisbee, if you don't know what Ultimate is, like, I know what Ultimate is. Not Ultimate Werewolf, Ultimate Frisbee. But that's crazy. That's crazy. So, and I think he's a teacher as well. But right now. But anyway, Steve is great, super smart, and of designers I've worked with, he's like, I'm going there, like, very to it, knows what he wants, knows what he gets, it, very confident in his work, and the quality shows. Then there's Susan McKinley Ross from Idea Duck, born in California, living in Sonoma County. If you don't know Susan's work, you should. She's responsible for Qwirkle. That's easily her most famous. But she just has a plethora of abstract kids and family games. They're all gorgeous and fun and interesting. You've Qwirkle, Hoot Owl Hoot, cool, Color Stick, Skippity, Surplexed, this or that. Like, there's a whole bunch of them, and she just has this incredible aesthetic where she just has really vibrant colors and geometric shapes, and so it's a combination of the simple, it's like colorful abstract, right? Like, and it's not dull, it's fun, it's lively, and that's often how she describes it. Though she put it as they have simple rules that lead to interesting decisions, and I couldn't agree more. She started in toys and did a number of different designs and worked there, and I think professionally as well, and then worked her way towards games. But super nice, super engaging. I think she sort of rolls a lot, has been into some of the international scene too, because Qwirkle, it won the Kinderspiel, I believe, and I can't remember I think it won, yeah, which is incredible, and has won other countless awards. And she loves holidays, May Day in particular. That was her fun fact, but her stuff is great. If you start with Qwirkle, because it really deserves all the praise it gets, but after that, I certainly suggest any of her other games, especially if you got little kids or even young kids. They're really, really great to play with, and it's like modern day, whether it's not tic-tac-toe, like checker, like games that you can just play and have fun and everyone enjoys and they go over well. So that's Susan. Then we have Keith Mateka. Keith runs Thunderworks Games. I've worked with Keith. He did the solo mode on Herbaceous, also doing it for Sunset Over Water and perhaps some other things. But he did Bullfrogs, but easily most known for Role Player. And if you haven't played Role Player, I highly recommend it. Check it out. He just completed the Role Player expansion, but I think won Dice Tower Awards, best game from an indie publisher, and a number of other awards. I think Role Player, the original, also got thematic a nomination, but the way he puts it is interesting decisions with simple mechanics, a little quirky with high replayability, and I think that's, I'm trying to think if that's how I would put it. I mean, that's how he gets to put it however he wants, but for sure his stuff is clearly play tested, and has lots of nice variability, and Role Player in particular just has oodles and oodles of content that really works well and feels good together. So I see that replayability. For me, like in a way, it's sort of the same statement as Susan had with that sort of simple mechanics, interesting decisions. I think his is a meatier version. I think his mechanics are simple, but the decisions have really drive interesting combinations of tactics and strategy. I think that's how I would think of it. There's simple, immediate, quick things that you can do that move you along, but you always want to think through the whole path with him, and they're really layered and interesting designs. I really enjoyed Bullfrogs, which was the tile-based tactical type of thing, but you still had that sense of knowing where you were going and what your planning was. Interesting, he also has a background in video games, and apparently has been a musician most of his life. He has a bachelor's in music, and then board games took over, and that's all taken a back seat. But he's engaged online and at conventions, and again, super high quality dude, engaged with everything that's going on. So Keith has always impressed me. Also, always striving to be better and be great. Like as a designer, not satisfied, always pushing. So that's great to see in a designer. Last up, one more guy from the league. This is Teal Christo. And Teal was actually born in Alaska, though he lives in Berkeley now. And he has Nothing Sacred Games. Teal has sort of bounced around with his game designs. He started with Corporate America, which is this funny political game with a lot of negotiation. Really good. I mean, it is really, really good. They just had a reprint campaign that went through. Corporate America is like, I've played so many bad political games that have like sort of timely vibe and sort of funny, like it is a rock solid game that also has that political side. But then he goes from there, and then he does Shadow Throne, which is this moody thematic drafting game, and it bounces to Birds of a Feather. If you haven't played Birds of a Feather, that is a fast, lightweight trick-taking game with this awesome mechanic of trick-on-trick taking. So like the last trick is relevant to the next trick. I think Birds of a Feather is just stellar. And he has another game coming out, Trellis, which is really good, and it's a sort of line tile laying extension flower game. So he's been all over the place, and actually how he puts it is he likes to keep his designs fresh and unique. They've been very different. Each of his games have been very different thematically and mechanically, and apparently he really likes it and wants to keep doing that. I think that's pretty awesome. I think it's awesome to be willing to go in different directions and take different creative risks. I think that's one of the cool things about Kickstarter, mind you. But it's, you have a number of designers that sort of feel one note, and it's cool when they're all over the place. And sometimes that means half the games they make don't fit your type that you want to play, but I think it's cool, nevertheless. To end on awkward, his fun fact was he makes some digital games, one of which was As I Lay Dying, which is you play as his girlfriend carrying his dead body out of the forest. It's a morbid love poem. So I haven't actually played As I Lay Dying. I think after this video I'm going to check it out. But super cool guy. And those are the 10 designers. Again, all sorts of game designers from all sorts of walks of life, from all locations. How you slice and dice to pick ones out. This wasn't like a top 10. This wasn't best design. It wasn't really that kind of thing. I just wanted to talk about these 10 people and let you know about them. And if you knew about half of them, fantastic. If you never heard of a few of them, go check them out. They've got some really cool games all over the place. And hopefully you like them as much as I do. I'm also very interested in perhaps other designers you'd be interested in profiling. I do the Q&A, so I can interview some designers directly. This was obviously me talking about them, but and then perhaps I'll go into art and other ones. But it'd be neat to do an international list or otherwise. But again, I want to stick to people where I'd really played their games. I have perspective on them. I've engaged with them to one degree or another. Some of these people I've worked with directly, some of them not, as sort of my starting point. But go see how you enjoy this. So subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Most importantly, play, make some great games. Thanks.